Sometimes rugby is just a pleasure to watch, and then other times it's the French derbies from this year's Champions Cup. It's been an unusual competition this year. Sale made it to the quarters without winning a pool game, Toulouse made it to the final without playing at home, and two tournament favourites, Leinster and Exeter, both shat the bed in increasingly impressive fashions in successive rounds. And then we got to the French knockout rounds, which embraced the worst aspects of the top 14. Watching fat forwards think about thumping each other whilst the world's shiniest talents stand on the wing doing a Sudoku. So when these turgid tussles left us with an all-French final to be played at Twickenham in the rain, I don't think I'd be alone in having a 9-6 festival of knock-ons flash before my eyes. But instead, we got a batshit back and forth game that gave a very fitting end to a bizarre tournament that's just been so hard to pin down. This game often felt open with attack on top, and yet there were very few clean breaks, and the first try wasn't scored until deep into the second half. Toulouse's pack looked on top, yet was being utterly dominated at scrum and line-out. La Rochelle looked more composed, yet clueless. Toulouse playing bold rugby on their own line, yet their kicking game suggested they were the team better keeping their heads despite Lavani Bottia's best efforts. So with all of that in mind, how did Toulouse's rebuilt class of 2021 match the heroics of Papa and Tamak in 1995 and beat La Rochelle, who, contrary to popular belief, are not 15 Rona O'Garas and different Fijian hats, to take their 5th European title? La Rochelle's growth from fun, likeable moneyball bonus boys to bona fide European force has often been about building their game around the weakest aspects of their opposition. The last decade, defence in the top 14 has traditionally not been a priority, whereas coaches like Andy Farrell, Paul Gustard, Brad Davis, even Steve Tandy and Byron Hayward have earned huge wages in the Premiership and Pro 14 for introducing innovative new systems that have since filtered up to the international game. A disproportionate number of top 14 clubs have defence coaches who are in their 30s, unproven, and often usually former players at that club, just promoted and filling the role, with the big exception of course being Toulon, who spunked money up the wall for the guy who was the defence coach that oversaw Japan's 84-7 loss to the All Blacks and London Irish's relegation season. Top 14 defences rarely innovate. Whilst we see new ideas in forward play and attack from the top 14 all the time, I mean, Xavier Garbajosa's time at La Rochelle could well change the fly-off position forever. It currently is already beginning to have that impact. Defences, they just kind of copy whatever the English or the international teams are doing, with often less line speed and more lumpy big lads. And so a lot of hype has been given to what John O'Gibbs and Ronan O'Gara have done in attack, but that's really just been tweaking and evolving La Rochelle's 100-year policy of moving the ball and playing compelling rugby. But the changes to their defence have been the key factor in giving them a point of difference over the other pretty average or exploitable KBA teams clogging up European rugby right now. Virtually every major team these days defends space. They're looking to suffocate, to reduce the options, the time the ball carrier has by putting them under pressure, or else requiring more and more ornate moves to try and break them down in the first place. Attacking a modern defence is a bit like trying to play ultimate frisbee in that room from the Star War where the walls are all getting crushier and crushier. It's why overlaps are so much harder to execute in 2021, because each defender is now coached to get up and eat up more space than Galactus with a hangover. A player like Chris Harris or Lukani Ram is superb at this, pressing aggressively then drifting before the pass is given or the tackle is made. This is roughly how Toulouse defend. They're just copying the current vogue, but La Rochelle do things very differently. La Rochelle don't defend space. La Rochelle don't even man-mark the players before them. La Rochelle defend the ball. In the semi-final, Leinster set up a pretty nice attack with loads of bodies in motion, which should create an overlap looking something like this. Now, a normal 2021 defence would cover this relatively easily by doing this. Tackle gets made, ball is on the touchline, Leinster can go again, probably end up playing 5 or 6 phases at least, blah-de-blah-de-blah, defence hopefully there to stop them. Instead, La Rochelle do this. Both Rule and Holmes blitz onto the same man and cause James Lowe to shit himself. a knock-on granting the Yellow Brigade the ball back. Even a pretty standard shape like this, a forward giving a pass into what the coaches call, the boots behind them, fly-off stood behind. Most sides just drift and press and cover and take out the threat from the fly-off whoever he passes to. La Rochelle instead send Bottier screaming up between Toner and Byrne, giving the bald Burj Khalifa two options. One, give a hospital ball, or two, abort it all and make a half-hearted carry himself into some big forwards who are pretty eager to tackle him. This all disrupted Leinster hugely. Patterns from past that are so effective against other teams becoming daydreams they don't dare execute. This defence is enormously high risk. Most defences would cover this kind of thing before it even gets to low easily, but La Rochelle's system gambles by putting pressure on the last pass, hoping to knock it off target, hoping to knock it into touch or make it maybe go forward instead of covering the space. Defences now are often set up to try and make sure they can withstand 10-15 phases. La Rochelle are looking to prevent the opposition even getting to 3. And broadly, it's worked. La Rochelle have had the best defence in Europe this season, conceding fewer tries than anyone else in the big 3 domestic leagues. So, if Toulouse were going to win that 5th title, they would first need to disable the defence that was hoping to take La Rochelle to their first. And so, from the first line out of the game, Toulouse do better than that and actively turn La Rochelle's defence against them, running a set play that a space-watching team would cover with ease, but one that rips through Rochelle like Colby through that Sudoku book in the first half where he didn't touch the ball once. Full 8-man line-out, ball off the top, and Untermack invites Peter Arquis onto a simple crash ball. Only one La Rochelle forward is able to wrap around to the short side, who is then engaged by Dupont. Toulouse, meanwhile, have just 2 men on this side until the ball is out, the others flashing around late, giving La Rochelle no idea where the ball they're trying to mark might go, who's going to have it, or where they're going to be. While she's shaping to pass, Dupont keeps his eyes on Kaino. So, Bottier steps in to take man and ball, except the ball instead goes behind to Elstad. West is trying to cover another pass out the back, and Dumaru covering the ball carrier, meaning Elstad can execute this as though it's a 2-on-1 and put Francois Crowe into the hole. A quote-unquote normal defence would just eat up the space and drift, but La Rochelle's ball watching allows Toulouse to pick off individual defenders instead of trying to open up the space, and as such, they concede a clean break in the first minute of the game because of their high-risk strategy. However, La Rochelle adapted pretty quickly. Inside the first few minutes, they stopped kicking for touch to give Toulouse these kind of opportunities, instead keeping the ball in play and forcing them to break them down from more organic positions. One such example can be seen here. This picture wouldn't be a problem for a lot of defences, but Kaino makes sure to commit his opposite number, and suddenly Leeds is unable to put pressure on the ball, only to kind of mark to cover it, and it creates a clear-cut chance which Kerbala then deals with superbly. Now, La Rochelle's defence is often exploitable, but they rarely panic and they almost never change anything, and Caballo causing a knock-on here shows exactly why they have such faith in it. Even after the
"Oh, what about that? Send him off! Send the drifting gate off! Get him off the field! That was diabolical! Get him off the field!"
They adapted pretty smoothly. La Rochelle simply fanned out. Off first phase, forwards filed off slightly wider, and they shifted the far side winger into 13 and the fullback onto the wing. And then the wing from the far side, the side that isn't currently being attacked, would fill in at fullback. And it worked very nicely. Look at this, right? Raymond Rule here makes a huge hit from the 13 channel that pressures Untermack into a poor pass that barely reaches Maydar's toes, which is exactly where his head was a few seconds earlier after being knocked clean off his shoulders by Lavani Bottier. Then, off second or third phase, Doulon moves back to fullback, and La Rochelle simply become less aggressive at the ruck. They're perhaps France's most eager pilfer hounds, winning more turnovers than any other team in 2020 top 14, and they normally really chase, really attack the breakdown, but instead here they just fanned out of the ruck and spread thinner, meaning Toulouse's ball was maybe 20% cleaner, but their defensive line was 95% unaffected. This kept defence on top for the entire first half, whilst Toulouse coach and owner of Rugby's most recently divorced uncle energy, Ugo Mola, tried to work out how to break Gibson O'Gara's very simple fix. Just before half-time, Mola called Dupont over the touchline. He likes to prowl to dispense some wisdom. Now, we can only hear a snippet and more français et non bon, but the bits I did get, talking about taking contact twice and keeping the ball with wild back and forth hand gestures, seemed to line up perfectly with the change of the tactics Toulouse did use to open up La Rochelle over the next 40 and eventually led to the opening try by Juan Cruz Maella. Off a line-out, they ran a simple crash ball through our key. Aldrit misses him so the centre can get a clear shot and fly off Ahea West, carrying him on for an extra few metres. Dupont made a habit all game of picking up the ball before passing. Normally, you'd want to play fast in order to limit the time a defence has to get up in your face, but Toulouse were looking to do the exact opposite of that. La Rochelle loved to fly up and make huge hits or cut off passes wide, and so by dissolving the offside line early, Dupont essentially invited his opposition to come up and play their hand. The later he leaves it, and Cubo Jesus Anton's core skills are good enough for him to leave it very late, the further out of shape any blitzing defenders will be, and hence the more time Toulouse have to identify that, and the more space is open to assault. In this case, it's Dumaru shooting up on Elstad, who flicks it fast to Untermac. La Rochelle are lined up pretty much as per, with Dulon on the wing and rule at 13, so Maella carries to take the pair out of the game before Dupont plays the next two phases fast from the base, looking to change the point of focus instead of actually looking to break them down on that phase. This is what Mola meant by hitting twice. Toulouse are just trying to work back to the spot where Archie first carried. La Rochelle's forwards are, as established, filling the middle of the field without Bottia, and Falmarina's carry draws 5 of them into an area smaller than Cheslin Colby's plimsolls. Aldrit, however, is not to be drawn, taking the post-red card wider position without anyone filling in here, so Dupont picks and crabs until the defence makes a decision. Aldrit decides he's going to drift as he would with France, instead of pinchering in on Dupont as maybe O'Gara would ask him to, whilst Untermac starts parallel to the ruck but drifts round late, like he did in the first minute, meaning none of the outside men can get a read on him until it's too late. They have no idea where he's going to be when he takes the ball, and trying to anticipate this leaves these two in no man's land. The play is too unpredictable to blitz, but their system means they aren't set up to drift. Whereas first phase they could both cover the guy getting the ball, here they both miss him. An absolutely stunning, beautiful, wonderful, magnificent, excellent, really good, really rugby, great pass from Gaelic Dan Carter, cuts out the entire backline and puts Tolofua into space. All eyes are understandably on Colby outside him, allowing him instead pass back inside to the much underrated Maella, who darts, dummies and finishes superbly. Really well taken, aesthetically pleasing try. The habit of hitting back where they came from was one of 2 changes to Toulouse's tactics at half-time. Toulouse kicked a lot in that first half, but when they did attack, it was ornate but rarely expansive, finding thrilling new ways to crash it up the middle, as the world's most dangerous winger hit half-time, having had 0 touches, but plenty of time to get through all the other activities on brain training. Because La Rochelle had adapted so naturally to going one man down, Toulouse continued to attack exactly as they would with 15 against 15, targeting that 13 channel until Mola's interjection. In the second half, Toulouse played far tighter. They picked and went around the ruck, they invited forwards to hit it up just a yard or 2 out from the breakdown, and perhaps most importantly, they kept further runners on the inside of those runners, overloading the space immediately around the ruck. La Rochelle had lightened up around the fringes, so Toulouse's tactics just became about drawing them back in. If they could tie forwards to the 5 metres around the ruck, the hole where Bottia should be would become so much more apparent. It would open up once again. This led to the moment that sparked the game into inexorable life, as Malvaca exploits the space before offloading to Dupont, who invites Colby to get back to doing what he does best: drop the Sudoku book, try and squeeze into that corner. It's a brilliant tackle by Dupont, but God, I just want you to just have a look at this, right? Okay, let's just freeze frame this here. The closest 10 players to Dupont are all in yellow, and yet he almost turns this into a try, a spectacular try. Rugby. That's all I have to say about this. This is my full analysis, right? My full analysis of this try. Let's watch them call. It's rugby. Just rugby. Whilst we're doing this week's trademark Dupont circle jerk, this was maybe my favourite moment of his maestroing from this week. Dupont here anticipates the turnover before our keys even made it and picks an absolutely killer line that was one of Kabbalah or Ozzy being a quarter of a second slower to react away from being a game-breaking breakaway try. It's tiny but it's brilliant. Toulouse started to compress the La Rochelle line and use this to get an edge also in the kicking game, dragging their overcompensating backfield around the pitch to create chaos. This move, bringing Colby round from the far wing, just in order to use him as a kicking option, is really smart. Knowing the danger he can cause and the sheer panic a defence can feel when they see Cheslin, bloody Colby actually touching the ball, Lades has to come in from the backfield, cover this space here, and it opens more space behind on that wing. Rule is put under pressure, hurries the kick, and even if he doesn't put it down in the full, Colby himself has dropped back and is now ready to counterattack from a more broken field. As it is, huge net gain for Toulouse. Yet, for all of their tactical strengths, they frequently found themselves struggling to live with La Rochelle, who spent so much of the game just one phase away from really cracking the four-time champions. Their try, eventually coming in the last 10 minutes, is pretty simple, but it's actually quite similar source to Toulouse's two best attacks. Their fly half also starts on the other side of the ruck, then runs around to the narrow side, but Toulouse's defence being more man-marking based, this attracts a defender to go with him and opens up the space on the line for Caballo to pin the ball down, dot it down and score the try that makes it such a mad, it just gave us such a mad final few minutes with near impossible tactical permutations of every touch of the ball. So much going on. Jeffrey Dumer here opting to pump the ball long to win some territory, and it's hard to argue with any decision La Rochelle make. The pack are on top and space is in the backfield. Toulouse instead pressuring them with 14-man defensive line. But when La Rochelle do regain the ball, it's ironically a moment of defending the ball, not the space, that saves Toulouse. The Yellow Army look more and more likely with every passing phase, and here they could just open Toulouse up, but Cheslin Colby abandons Toulouse's defensive plan and does exactly what he would do if he was playing for the Springboks, shooting in from out on the wing and nailing Dupont. It doesn't matter that he doesn't get him to ground, momentum has swung and the chance is gone. La Rochelle played 4 phases in 15 seconds prior to this tackle. They play 1 in 15 seconds after. With 2 minutes on the clock, each of those seconds count. And just to close things out, Dupont almost does his patented put it out too early trick. It's his wonderful party trick, which I'm seriously starting to worry might be an omen ahead of the 2023 World Cup. He does it again, just summing up how the game had been. Intensely scrappy, but my god, you can't take your eyes off it, providing Levani Botti hadn't sent him hurtling through space. Sure, much like the Sudokus Colby was doing for the first 40 minutes, we only needed the numbers 1 through 9 for the first half, but it was so compelling. The top 14 hasn't been broadcast in the UK this year, but I think showing that one match just gave us the entire experience. But that was maybe the most top 14 game ever played, and indeed, in some ways, the most rugby. Richard Burton once described the sport as dance, then opera, then the blood of a killing. And that was what Saturday's final gave us. Dance, opera, sideburns in space, Antoine Dupont, and an overall package that was absolutely certainly a pleasure to watch. Thank you for watching that. I hope you enjoyed it. There's loads more coming up in the pretty immediate future, particularly Lions related. There's loads of Lions stuff coming up with the Lions starting in a Lions month. That's now a month away as I record this, to the day. So I hope you look forward to all of that. I've also got, if you want more red cards, I've been continuing the Squidge Report World Cup Retrospective podcast, which is on any podcast provider you want to look for. We've got both the semi-finals, the second semi-final about this week. They're all recorded, and we're moving on to the final and the third place playoff very, very soon. So if anyone wants to listen to it, I watched the Sam Warburton red card Wales-France semi-final back for the first time since the day it was played for this podcast, and my brother who writes Rugby as well, their thoughts are available in full if you want to go and listen to that on the podcast. That's available wherever you'll get podcasts. There's also plenty more around the channel, and hopefully I'll see you very soon for more stuff.
Oh, what